What's up, everyone? So today we're going to take a couple pine 2x6s and we're going to turn them into a waving wooden American flag. Pretty simple to do, a little time consuming, but this is what it'll come out looking like once we're finished. Let's get it started. So I went up to the depot, got a couple 10-foot 2x6s. They're made out of pine. The reason I did that, well, it's cheap, and this is the first time I've ever built one of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these at 37.5 inch. That's what I want. The flag is going to be 37.5 and about 19 wide. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut that down just like so, and then once we have our first cut, we can cut the rest of the boards to length. And I'm going to use my Milwaukee IA miter saw right here, and we're going to start slicing and dicing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this right on the line. Now there are a couple things that I would have done differently for my next build. I will tell you what those are during the video, but right now we're just going to cut the wood. Again, that's 37.5 inches long, and now that you got your starter board, just cut the rest to length. They're all going to be the same. Now I'm going to try to let you know other ways of doing this if you don't have all of these tools. So if you don't have a miter saw, you can use a circular saw, and worst comes to worst, you can also use a handsaw. Now you're going to have 7 of these boards all together. That way we can cut these in half, and then we're going to end up with 14 stripes. We only need 13, but you'll have enough. Now once we get this cut, we're going to run these over to our planer. Now if you don't have a planer, that's fine. You can use a belt sander or you can use a hand planer. It's pretty cheap. You can pick those up pretty much anywhere, but you have to make the tops of these smooth. Now if you don't get these smooth, what's going to happen is you're going to try to glue these boards up to make that flag, and you're going to have openings throughout the stripes. That's not going to be good. You got knots, you got saw marks over here. It's just ugly. So that's why you want to get smooth. So it doesn't matter really how you do it. The planer is the best way, but again, you can use a sander or you can use a hand planer. Just get those smooth on both sides. Now these don't need to be perfect, but I'm telling you, everything that you do right here in the beginning stage, if you do it wrong, it's really going to mess you up at the end stage, and you're going to come back and you're going to kick yourself in the butt. So again, try to make this smooth on both sides. Now that we got those ran through on both sides, you can see that they're pretty smooth. They're not perfect, but a lot smoother than what they were. But now what we got to do is cut them right down the middle. The 2x6 is actually 2x5.5. So what we're going to do is take 2 3/4 off. We're going to cut it right down the middle, and then we're going to end up with 2 pieces out of the one. Now all we got to do is set up our fence to 2.5 inches and start the rip. You just really want to make sure that when you cut these boards, everything is basically the same width and the length, because once you start putting this together, you don't want to be messing around with all that. So just cut them right down the middle, right down the line, 2 3/4 inches. Now even though we only need 13 stripes, what's nice is you'll have an extra stripe, because I guarantee, because this is pine, and I gotta be honest with you, Home Depot doesn't always have the best lumber, you're gonna end up needing an extra one because one of them is gonna be junk. So you can throw it out, replace it with the extra board. So once again, 14 boards, keep one extra, don't just throw it away, hold on to it, and there you go. We're gonna do one more thing though. We're gonna run this through the planer again. Now if you don't have a planer, I wouldn't suggest doing this because you're going to end up sanding and grinding and cutting and all that good stuff anyway. But because we have the planer, we're just going to run it through on the edges here, and we're going to round out or take the rounded out edges off, make them nice and flat. Now again, if you don't have a planer, that's fine. You don't have to really necessarily do this. I'm doing it because again, I have the planer, and it's going to make sure that everything lays flat. But because you are sanding, because you are grinding, they don't really need to be flat. They're going to be taken off anyway, so don't really over concern yourself about this step. But you can see that everything here is pretty much basically the same cut, the same width, the same length. Now it is time to start putting it together and actually carving this thing out. Now I would definitely recommend pipe clamps. This is probably the best type of clamp to use while you're making one of these, because they kind of stay out of your way. You don't have to worry about grinding around them. They will get in your way a little bit, but not as bad as some other clamp, and you can lay them down right on top of this. So go ahead, line out your pieces, just see what you like. You want those knots to stay underneath, right? If you have any damage or any type of splitting up on top, don't use those boards on the top, flip them over. And now that you have your 13 boards picked out, what you want to do is line them up, get them square, right? See if they're going to set right, and they all should, because they all been planed down, they all been cut to length. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to start making some marks. We want our waves to go into this flag, and they should look natural, right? So you're going to tighten those down. You're going to take your pencil and just design it how you want it to look. If you want some waves on the back end, which I did, that's fine. Throw them down here. You want it to look like this flag is waving naturally. Once you get those pencil marks in, then you can start the grinding. But like I said, plan this out first, because if you make one mistake on this, even though these flags are pretty forgiving, well, you're going to end up very upset with yourself at the end. Alright, so I definitely want that back end to start dipping down a little bit. So all I'm going to do is trace that out. You can find an image online if you want. Doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, so this is telling me this is my high spot. We're going to make another one here. Now this is where I would have changed up a little bit. I'll show you here. It depends on what type of cutting tool, carving tool that you're using. And I was a little impatient. I'll show you which one that I think will work best for you. Just get those lines in. Alright, you can see this is where we're wanting it to go. You have those lines kind of curving a little bit, looking like, you know, the wind's taking that fabric and blowing it. We're going to cut down some of the edge pieces here, and then we're going to actually hit a couple grooves up on top. We're just going to make it look like that wind's blowing this thing. Now, here's the dealio. We are going to use a grinder. I am using the Ridgid Octane 4.5 inch grinder. You can see the review. I'll put the card right here. But if you have an electric grinder, I would suggest you use it, because I am going to burn through a lot of batteries. Now, as for the wheel that we're going to use, this is from the Harbor Freight. It only ran about $6 or $8. It's a carbide face carbide wheel, right? Has metal on here. You're going to need this regardless. $6. Go up to Harbor Freight and get it. But here's the problem. Even though you're going to need this regardless to actually do the smoothing and all that, I use this to carve. I wish I wouldn't have done that. What I should have done is use one of these. They actually had these right here with the chains up there at the Harbor Freight. They wanted $28 for one of these, not this brand. Amazon actually wanted $14. They would not meet the price. So I said, forget it. I went to Amazon. I actually bought a higher grade, more quality wheel, the Lancelot, right? So I wish I would have used that. Would have carved this down so much faster. That is one of the mistakes that I made. I actually have it coming in today, but for now we're going to use the carving wheel because I'm cheap. Alright, so now we're going to follow our lines. You can see here I'm starting to carve this down again. If I would have used that chain disc, man, it would have went so much faster. Then I could have went over with this carving disc here, the smoother. I probably would have knocked about 2 hours off my time. This takes about 6, 7, maybe 8 hours to make one of these things. So I'm just smoothing it down here. You can see all of that wood is actually tying in together. When you grind it down, it actually like kind of meshes into one, so it's really nice. So all we're going to do is we're going to hit it. We're going to take that off, and we want those waves to look natural. Now another thing I will say is, if I would have waited for that grinding disc or that cutting disc to come in instead of using this one here to cut this all out, I could have went a lot deeper. It wouldn't have taken a lot of time, and I really could have got those large waves in there, where on this you'll see the cuts on it, they're a little bit deeper and they almost look like lines. It came out good, but I really wish I would have had that chain disc. And even though that chain disc, that carver would have taken a lot more out, it would have been nasty and gnarly, right? Because it's not going to be smooth. I could have went back over it with this. Alright, you can see what I'm doing here. Instead of just making a drop off, you know, cutting it sharp, I'm going back over the edges here. I'm cutting that line and I'm smoothing it out here. So again, it makes it look like a natural breeze through that fabric here. So let's cut a couple more lines here. And then we're going to actually start carving that part down as well. Well, again, you just want to draw those lines in right where we put those marks on with the pencil. That's where you want to create those lines and then smooth them out. You don't want a really deep line, right? You want to make it wavy, 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 wavy. And again, what's really nice about these flags is they're really forgiving. So even if you make a mistake, depending on the mistake, right, you can fix them, right? So you can see that wave right there really deep, so we really got to smooth that out. But again, if I wasn't so cheap, if I would have had a King Arthur chain disc, I would have been able to do that so much faster and really made those waves thin and then just rise up like a wave. So there you go, you can see it's starting to take form down here. Those are your waves, and when you put that gloss on the end, I'll show you that, that's really going to pop. It's really going to look good. Not only do you want to put those waves across those lines, you can see those dips right here. I'll show you how to make those real simple. That really adds a lot to that flag, because if you just put the lines in the middle of the flag and you don't have anything up on top, it's just going to look like, I don't know, it's going to look weird, right? So you're definitely going to have to do something up on the top, and I'll show you that again. But you can see here, we got those waves starting to form. Now we're just going to go on to our other lines. Alright, so now we're going to move on the other side of the flag. I'm going to do the end pieces first. Okay, so this is the bottom, then we're going to go over by the union. We're going to do that, but just watch out. Again, you have to watch out for those pipe clamps, because if you go too deep, you're going to cut into those. So I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm going to get a couple extra clamps here. I'm going to put them on top, and then I can actually move those pipe clamps around if I need. But just smooth that out, right? Take as much off as you can at first. And then once you start getting down there, then you can start smoothing out the top of that. And I will tell you this, if you did this inside, you're going to have one hell of a mess. Try to do it outside if you can, because there's going to be a lot of freaking dust, especially with this wheel here. Now again, if I was using the chain disc, it would be more of a wood chip instead of a dust, but because you're using this metal disc here, check out all the dust here. You'll see it gets crazy. Right now you can see it's starting to take form. We're starting to put waves on this front here. We're going to go on the back. We're going to clean it up a little bit. Now we're going to start making our lines right here. Again, just follow that line there. Start smoothing it out. Start making that valley. Doesn't really matter how deep you go at first. You can clean that up. Here's your other line. Right here you can see we're starting to make those divots right here. We want to smooth that out. We don't want a real sharp line, so we're going to actually make that look like it's, again, kind of flowing into each other. Alright, so let's keep cutting here. You can see that little X right there. I'm going to show you this. All you got to do, because your grinding wheel's round, pretty simple, just kind of hit it on the one side. And once you hit that on the one side, just flip it around, hit it on the other side, and then you'll just smooth that out as well. You know, what's really nice about that is it actually looks like they are ripples in the flag, so just smooth it out. Now it looks like it got some dimension to that flag there. It's not just a couple lines in the middle of it. It actually looks like it's blowing down on the bottom as well. So now we're going to smooth this out here a little bit. Again, on this one I think those lines are maybe a little bit too deep. Not even really too deep. I just wasn't able to, you know, smooth them out and fade them in as much as I would have liked to, because I did not have that other disc. Alright, so the more work you do up front, the less you're going to have to do on the back end. You can see here we got all of our grooves here, but we want to clean those up. Clean those up with that disc, because if you don't, you're going to have a whole heck of a lot of sanding to do. So just try to get them as smooth as you can. You know, get that where you want it to look, because once you get those in, that's it. I mean, when you're done cutting out like this, the sanding isn't going to do anything but smooth it out for you. So I have your divots here on the edge here. Now it's looking a little bit more natural because of those divots that we're putting in, and those edges we're going to cut out, and we're going to smooth out those edges as well. What's nice about this is that once you get this together and you start cutting it down, you know, everything kind of molds into each other. So check out all that dust. Telling you, it's dirty. It's a dirty process, but a very cool one indeed. Alright, now that we got everything cut out, carved out, we got to sand. This is a pain. But what we're using here is 40 grit. Unfortunately, I bought the sticky stuff. I needed the Velcro, so we're just going to do it by hand anyway. I think it actually helps you smooth those lines out a little bit better instead of just using the sander. So get all of that heavy nasty stuff off, all of the pine that's just chopped up and all those marks, because if you don't do it with that heavier grit, it's going to be really hard to do it with the lighter grit. Now you can see, even though we used that carving disc, it's still just nasty up on top. So again, you want to sort of go with the grain if you can, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to have to get into those grooves anyway. So do whatever you need to do to get that heavy stuff off. Then we will come back and hit it with the sander with that finer grit paper. We're going to go 40 grit, we're going to go 80 grit, and then we're going to go 120 grit. Alright, now that we're starting to get that, let's go up in the front here. Let's get these other waves in the back. You're going to have to get in there with your thumb and your hand. Just get that heavy stuff off. You're not going to get it completely smooth right off the bat. And this is just trying to take that heavy nasty stuff down. So I'll tell you what, if you don't, and you go to put gloss on this, you're going to see it. Again, make sure that you actually get in those crevices, those lines. If you don't, you're going to see scratches and all that stuff. So just get rid of all that. Take a little extra time if you have to. I know it's a pain, but whatever you skip now, you're going to see at the end. Now, once you get that 40 grit all done, we're going to move on to 80 grit, and we're going to use a sander. Now, again, if you don't have a sander, you can do this by hand. It's just going to take a lot longer. But what's nice about this is it's Orbital, right? This is the DeWalt sander. We also did a review on this. I'll tell you what, love this sander. Don't know what I'd do without it. You know, even with the air. You know, if I had an air sander, which I used on a couple other flags, it just takes forever because, you know, my tank's only 15 gallons and it takes a lot to fill it up. So we're going to take the sander, hit it with the 80 grit, and just smooth all of the rough areas out. Basically what you're trying to do is not only smooth this out, right, you're trying to take out those gouges, even the gouges that you put in with the 40 grit, because that 40 grit, that's some pretty heavy duty stuff, right? So you're trying to get that heavier stuff out. This is not your finished sanding. And once you finish it up with the 80, then we'll go with that lighter fine paper, and then we'll smooth it out. But get everything, get that 80 grit in everywhere, right? Fold it over like so, and then hit the middle line. Now again, because it's my first one, I'm looking at these lines and I just wish I would have feathered those out a little bit more. They look good, but I just wish I would have feathered those out a little bit more than what they are. Alright, now that we got that 80 grit paper done, you know, it feels pretty smooth, but that is definitely not the last finish that we're going to go with that. We're going to go with 120 grit. We're going to put this on the sander here, and we're just going to sand the crap out of it. Don't gouge, don't dig this thing into the wood, just go smooth. Don't stay in one spot the whole time. Just do what you can to get those gouges out, get that really nice smooth finish, because what you do here is what you're going to see at the end. Take your time on it. Now, even though that's looking pretty good, I can't really get into those wave lines really good, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that paper off now, and I'm going to use my hand. Get the gouges out. You don't want to see those. No matter what you do, if you don't get those out, you're going to see them. So just take your time on this. Take some pride. Alright, so we got it all sanded up, but now we need to stain. Here's the thing though, we have to number each one of these. Before I took this off, I put 1 through 13 on the bottom right of each one of these planks. You need to number these because you need to know where they go and how they go back together. Once you start staining, you're not going to be able to see those numbers if you put them in the wrong place. So, alright, let's do our union line here. All we're going to do is line that up with the edges and just draw a straight line down. We'll hit it right here, and we'll leave another mark. I'm going to leave another mark right here. And we'll go over and we'll get a nice sharp line. Because that thing flexes and bends that plastic, I'm not going to risk it. Let's get that nice sharp line. And I'm going to show you a really cool trick here to get really sharp stain lines on this. Alright, so what we're going to do now is stain. So basically you're going to start out with the top stripe completely black, and then you're going to go with the union. So it's one stripe's going to be partially black, and then the next stripe is going to be completely black. The next stripe down, partially black, and I'll show you how to do that here. But remember, make sure you number these on the bottom, 1 through 13. So let's take these apart. What I need here is the second one down, fourth one down, sixth one down. We're going to do these first. We got to take these out, and we're going to stain part of the union. Very important that you do this here. You're going to need some razor blades as well. Just lay those off to the side here. Now you can see this is part of the union here. There's the line right here. We're going to take a razor blade. We're going to put that right there like so on that line, and we're going to hammer it down a little bit. Don't go crazy. You don't want to break that wood or split it. You're just going to tap it down in there so it goes in about 1/16 of an inch. And now you don't have to worry about that stain going across your line. You're going to have that really nice edge line there. When it comes with that union, you don't have to worry about bleed over. So just tap those down. Remember, we had 3 of those. We had the first one, the second one, the fourth one, and the sixth one. So tap those down like so, and one more on the third, and we're going to stain that. Alright, so here's the third one here. Put that down in. That's it. I'm telling you, this is a really cool little trick that I learned from a friend on Instagram. You don't have to worry about any tape, bleed over, anything. So now that we got our 3 blades in, and that's all we need, just 3 blades and 3 of those pieces there, the second, the fourth, and the sixth. And now we're going to stain that left piece, and what we're going to use is the ebony. This is an oil-based stain. I'll tell you what, it gets really dark, but man, if it doesn't dry up right, which we'll see here in a bit, it's a real pain to carve those stars. So I might actually switch up from using this to an actual black paint, but you want to get the entire area, cover the entire top piece of that union, get all the way up to that razor blade. When you're rubbing that in, don't use a brush, because if you put too much of this stuff on, it just gets gummy and it is a nightmare to get off. Now another thing I did here is I wore gloves, because again, this stuff, man, it just soaks into everything. It's a really nice black, but man, now you want to get those sides. If you do not get the sides, you are going to see white marks in through the lines where they come together, or the stripes when they come together. So get the left, the right, the top. That's why I put the numbers on the bottom, so I don't go over those numbers with the stain. So now I got 3 of those done. I'm going to let those dry up a little bit. Now we have to stain a couple other ones here completely black. Alright, so let's do that here. We got 1, we got 3, we got 5, we got 7, we got 9, we got 11, and 13. These are all going to be stained completely black. So let's do that now. Get inside all of those flag lines right there, those waves. Get the edge pieces, the ends. Let us sit down in, and then once you get all that stain on all of these, let them set for about 15 minutes. You're going to come and you're going to wipe them off. Again, I think I'm going to go with the paint next time. Again, this is the first time ever doing this, so I definitely think I'm going to go with a black paint, just because I think it's going to dry a little bit harder. It's not going to saturate into the wood as much, and it's going to be a lot easier to carve those stars out. So let's just wipe this down here. You want all that excess sauce. I'm telling you, if you put this on with a brush and if you put it on too thick, you might as well just toss this thing out now, because you're never going to carve those stars out. It's going to gum up on you. It's just going to be a mess. Now that we got those all stained up, let them dry, because you definitely want to let them dry. If you don't let them dry and they come into contact with that plain wood, that oil base, man, it just soaks in everything, and it's going to be a nightmare to get out. So let them dry out. Now we got to start putting these things together, right? So we got to look for our number 1. Remember, we numbered these, yeah? So we're going to look for number 1. That's going to go up on the top, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to 13. So So we found our number 1. Number 13 down there. Now on those black ones, you also want to stain the ends here. You can see a couple of them, they're not stained, so I'll hit that later. But okay, so there's our 1. We got a B. There's number 2. There's number 3. That's the third board. Another solid black. We're looking for number 4. There it is. Now we need another solid black. That'll be number 5. Where's our number 6? It's another black and white board. Now we're going to go another black. Looking for 7. Where are you? Somewhere. It's always the last one I pick up. There it is. 7. Okay, let's put that down in there like so. And now the rest of them are going to be plain, stained, plain, stained. So now we gotta look for 8, 9. There you go. We gotta go 10. It's a plain board. Push that back. Come on. There you go. 11. 12. Now one more. After this, that's 13. You can see how they line up again. There you go. So that's why it's important to stain those boards separately. Don't let them touch, and that is also why it's important to number those boards, because if not, you will not remember where these things go. So line them up a little bit here. Don't need to be perfect. We're gonna tighten those clamps up a little bit, and then we can adjust. Just get them close, then start tightening them up. Alright, so before we do that, we gotta put some glue on here. Here's another tip. Don't go crazy with the glue and don't brush it on. A lot of people want to brush it on because of those stripes. If you get any of that glue popping up on the top, man, it is going to go all over the place and you are not going to be able to clean it off. You're going to have black stain running into your plain wood. It's going to be a mess. So just put a little bit on and I promise you it'll spread out. When I put that glue on, all I really do is kind of put those boards up together and just kind of adjust them a little bit. Let it spread out a little bit. But you don't need to use a brush, okay? It's too much. Just throw that glue on there. You're good to go. Now the glue that I'm using here is Titebond. I believe it's Titebond 2. This stuff is really good. It takes a little while to dry. But once you put that on there, you'll just clamp these down together. You'll let it set for about 5 to 6 hours, right? So you got all the glue on there. And now we just got to adjust it out a little bit, right? Now even if you get these perfect, once you start to clamp them down, they're just going to mess up again anyway. So just get them close, and then you tighten those clamps down to snug. Once you tighten it snug, then you can get them lined up perfectly. And again, this is very forgiving. So now that we got those down tight, I'm going to put 2 in the middle here, really crimp those together, and now I can really crank those 2 pipe clamps so they don't move on me, because I have the 2 clamps holding it together. Just tighten it down. It should be good to go. So we're going to let that dry. You can see that it's starting to ooze and goose out already, but it's not too much. Trust me, they will hold. Don't brush that stuff on there, because I'll tell you what, you're going to have a mess. So now that we got this out here in the sun, it's about 70 degrees outside today. We're going to let it dry for about 5-6 hours. Just going to let it sit. We're not going to mess with it. We're not going to touch it, adjust it, anything. The only thing I might do is wipe some of that excess glue off. Alright, so now about 7 hours worth of dry time should be good enough to be able to take this off, not have to worry about it falling apart. That glue, it really bonds tightly. Titebond. So now we're going to take this off. We're going to bring this into the shop, and we are going to start tracing out our stars. Stars go up. We're going to use our template here. Now this is not going to be easy. When you go to put this thing together, right, if your waves are too deep, man, you're going to have one hell of a time putting those stars on. So all you want to do is when you're doing those stars, feather those things out you know, when you actually make those stripes, I apologize. When you make those stripes, feather them out so that way it's not a nightmare when you're doing your stars. Alright, so now all you gotta do is push down, go into those creases, you just gotta trace out those stars, then you're ready for the Dremel. And there you go, so we got all 50 of these here traced out, and now it's time to carve. All we're gonna use is the Dremel with the flex shaft on it. Makes things a lot easier. I see a lot of people paint these things on there, and that's fine if you're just doing a regular flag, but if you're doing something like this and you're putting that much time and money into this, you're probably looking at about $50–60 if you don't have the materials, not to mention the tools, right? But carve them out, don't paint them on, just, you know. But we're going to go with the smallest tip here, the rotary tip for the Dremel, and we're just going to start carving on these things. Alright, so now we're going to start carving this. If that stain dries and you don't put it on too thick, these things carve out really nice. The problem that I noticed with this is because there's dips, some of that stain didn't really want to dry all that well. Some of it actually built up, and some of them were just a pain. So again, I think that is why I am going to go with the black paint next time. Yeah, I definitely think with that black paint, when you go to carve these out, it's going to leave a very clean wood. That's what I wanted on this flag, and unfortunately I didn't get them all like I wanted to. But I love the rotary tool. Yeah, don't paint those. I don't know. I just don't think it looks that good. So see that? So I'm gonna have to let that dry a little bit and then come back and hit it again. Kind of disappointed in that. Stain just did not want to dry. I'm not sure if there's a lot of humidity in the air or what, but I let it set for quite some time. Set a couple more of these. The other thing that was driving me nuts is it started to gum up my rotary bit. Look at this. So what I did was I actually let them sit in some mineral spirit for a while and help clean some of that gumminess out of there. But after a couple more stars, it went right back to being the same. Alright, now once you get all those stars carved out, which will take a while, you're going to go with the polyurethane. Now I really like this stuff here. This is a water base, but it's almost like giving 3 coats when you give 1 coat. It's really thick. It's a clear gloss. It's really going to make it shine. You want to use a brush that's half decent. Don't go out and buy a cheap brush. This one here is probably 10–15 bucks, but it's for water base. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit those lines first. Now what you sort of need to know about this is that this stuff is thick and it will run. If you put too much of this on, it actually goes down into that valley of the, I guess, waves, and it will actually puddle up, it'll pull up, and it will dry white. So make sure that when you put that first coat on, make it nice and thin. You just want it to stick, right? But don't go crazy with this stuff. This stuff is really thick. I love this polyurethane. I got it at the Home Depot. Like I said, I think it's like 14 bucks, but 1 coat adds up to like 3 coats. It's really thick and it works well. But get those valleys first, let it dry up, and then hit it, but just don't go crazy. More is not always better, especially in this case here. Alright, so we got that first coat on in those lines. Now we're going to hit everything else. We're going to hit it with a light coat. Again, don't go crazy with this because that will seep down into those lines and it'll make that nasty white filmy look in those, and it just, I'm telling you, it doesn't look good, and there's nothing you can do after that. You can't even sand it down because it gets gummy and it just stays like that. So we're going to hit these again here. This is going to be our second coat. You can even put 3 coats on this if you wanted to. I think I'm going to put 3 coats on it. It's going to give it a really nice shine. And once you get that first coat on, even if you go against the grain, it's not that big of a deal. Hit that in there again. Remember, get all those nooks and crannies up on top that we put. You don't want any dull spots anywhere. I used to use a semi-gloss look, but I'll tell you what, that gloss, that high gloss, man, it just looks so nice. It really does. Some people like the flat and satin look, but I just like that gloss look, especially with something like this, because it really helps bring out those waves. Now, in between coats, you're probably looking at about 30 minutes before you can put another coat on. This stuff dries pretty quick because it is water-based. That's what I like about it. But you want to hurry up and put it on. If you sit there and linger with this stuff, it'll gum up and it'll start leaving some really nasty looking finishes on there. So, alright, this is really wet. Pretty nice coat on there. We're going to let it dry, and I'm going to show you the end result on this. There you go, your wavy flag. Now mind you, I used about 2.5 2x6s. This thing weighs about 20-25 pounds. It is not light at all. So when you go to put hangers on this, make sure that you put hangers that will hang this thing and they're not going to fall off the back. So you want to go maybe with like some type of, you know, D hooks or D hangers or something that is really going to hold this up. And there you go. Here's the final finished flag for you to view. It took about 6-7 hours with all that grinding and all that sanding, and the carving of the stars just takes forever, especially like on a wavy flag like this, because you got to get into those areas. I definitely think I'm going to go paint next time, but I think it came out pretty nice. I wish I would have been able to feather those out a little bit more, those waves, but all in all, not bad for the first time. That's how you did it. They're made out of 2x6 pine. They're 10 feet long. I used about 2.5 of those boards, and yeah, there you go. And you could do anything you want. You could do the red, white, and blue. You know, you could do a distressed look, whatever you want. But yep, figured I'd share it with you. I hope you liked this video. If you liked the video, thumbs up, subscribe. Check us out at toolreviewzone.com, and also come say hi to us on Instagram and Twitter. We'll be back with more tool reviews and DIYs soon.